Welcome to the Hope Natural Health Podcast. I'm Dr. Erin Ellis, your host. On this show, we discuss all things health, hormones, and happiness with a little side of this thing called life. Melissa Dowbiggin is a holistic nutritionist on a mission to empower women to break free from sugar cravings so they can lose weight, reclaim their energy, and live vibrant, healthy lives. After years of battling her own sugar cravings and feeling trapped in a cycle of fatigue, frustration, and yo-yo dieting, Melissa transformed her life with nutrient-dense foods and a low-sugar lifestyle. Her deep passion for health and wellness led her to study at the Institute of Holistic Nutrition and become a certified nutritional practitioner. Now, she dedicates herself to guiding others on the same life-changing journey. Through her group coaching programs like the 12-week Sugar Cravings Solution and the 7-day Sugar-Free Challenge, Melissa inspires and supports women to lose weight, take control of their health, and create lasting positive change. Welcome to the show, Melissa.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Yay. I'm excited to talk more about cravings, sugar cravings, how they can affect us. But first, tell me a little bit more about your journey and really how you got to do what you're doing today.
Well, my journey started, I was pretty young, and I noticed pretty quickly, although when you're young, you don't really notice that much, that I was eating a lot of sugar. And at first it started with overeating, which then turned to binge eating, and then into an eating disorder. And when it all started, I remember like hiding snacks and eating, hiding and eating so that nobody would see me because I was overeating, even as young as maybe 10. And that, of course, led to binging. And then as I get older, I was afraid of gaining weight too. So that turns into an eating disorder. And so I've been dealing with this for a long, long time. I eventually went to see somebody for the eating disorder, and they told me it was control issues and to try intuitive eating and all that. And that I tried, and that didn't really work for me. Having a no hands off or no rules or no boundaries or anything like that around food, and just trying to listen to what my body wanted didn't really work, because what my body wanted all the time was just sugar and treats and snacks. So I've kind of been on this roller coaster ever since, but eventually I studied nutrition and I started to really understand what sugar was doing in the body, what nutrients were doing in the body, and how the body worked and how the brain worked with food too. So that really led me to doing what I'm doing now and helping women overcome their sugar cravings too, so that they can reach their health goals, lose weight, and get to a good place with their health. Because I've done that. I've tried everything, and here we are today, and my health is so much better. Doing the alternative things, not really the conventional things, not what the doctors or therapists told me to do, because I wouldn't be where I am today or in a good place if that's the path I continued with.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's dive into those sugar cravings. Why are sugar cravings so common, and how do they really affect our overall health?
They are so common because they happen for a lot of different reasons. And for one, we're eating a lot more sugar than we think we are. Today, we're maybe eating a cup of sugar a day. The average person is eating about a cup of sugar a day, of added sugar too, not sugar from fruit or sugar from natural sources, but added sugar. And it's in a lot of things we wouldn't think, like, pre-made meals in the grocery store, and crackers and salad dressings. It's in a lot of those foods that we wouldn't think, and sugar just drives more sugar cravings. And we crave because maybe our brain is affected, emotional eating, our dopamine regulation is affected by the sugar cravings, our gut is impacted by sugar intake, and all of that together causes us to crave maybe that we're not sleeping enough. So it does come from a lot of different reasons, but the solution is simpler than you think too.
Yeah. So dive a little bit more into like some of the foods that contain the hidden sugars that we might not be aware of. You mentioned a couple, but I know there's a lot more.
Yeah, yeah. Salad dressings are a big one,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you see fat-free on the label. It probably just
Mm-hmm.
means it has a lot more sugar. I think fruit juice is really a tricky one too, because they can label it as naturally sweetened and it sounds better, it looks better, but fruit juice, when you take away all the fiber and you take away a lot of the nutrients, what you're left with is just pure sugar. It's the
Mm-hmm.
same with sugarcane. When you're refining it and you're stripping nutrients from it and you're taking things out of it, you're just left with pure sugar. Well, it is the same with fruit too. And when you have something that's sweetened with fruit juice, that's the first ingredient maybe, that's still a lot of sugar. It's still a refined sugar.
Mm-hmm.
When you're drinking juice, an orange juice or an apple juice, you think like, oh, it's healthier, but it doesn't have the nutrients that whole foods do. It doesn't have the fiber that whole foods do, and it's it's a condensed source of sugar. So a glass of apple juice actually has around the same amount of sugar as pop, as like a Pepsi or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's quite a bit of sugar. You'd never eat, 8 oranges in a row. You couldn't do it because you'd probably throw up because of the amount of fiber in it. But you can easily squeeze 8 oranges into a glass and drink it. And what you're doing is you're just squeezing the sugars and the glucose out of there and drinking it. Maybe you're
Mm-hmm.
getting a little bit of nutrients if it's fresh, but it's still taking out all the fiber that's going to slow down the sugar from entering your body, and you're condensing that sugar too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, mhm.
We've got salad dressing, fruit juice. What else?
um, Salad dressing, fruit juice. I mean, it can be hidden in a lot of stuff, even some deli meats. A lot of the processed foods,
Yeah.
almost all, it's like
Mm-hmm.
70% of the grocery store that has
Right.
added sugar. You get crackers that you never think, like, these crackers are savory. You never think there was added sugar, but there
Mm-hmm.
is. Cereals, even when it might not be obvious that it's sugar too, because it goes by many different names. So it may be
Mm-hmm.
labeled as something else. So it's very sneaky. It's got over 200 and some, like over 250 names, quite a bit of names that sugar can go
Mm-hmm.
by. And so it can be labeled as dextrose or cane sugar, molasses, a lot of different names. Another thing that's really sneaky are the starches,
Mm-hmm.
especially the refined starches like your maltodextrin, the potato starch, the corn starch. Those are starches that have been extracted from these foods, but they're really high glycemic, meaning they'll enter the bloodstream really quickly, just like sugar. And these
Mm-hmm.
starches are just they're polysaccharides. They're just strings of glucose molecules, which is just sugar. Your body
Mm-hmm.
takes sugar and converts it to glucose. That's what table sugar is, glucose and fructose. Well, a polysaccharide, when you refine it from a starch, you take like potato starch, you've refined it from the potato, you're taking away all the fiber and everything good in that potato and just having the starch. That's just a string of glucose molecules, and that's going to enter the bloodstream quickly as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just going to act just like sugar in the body. So that one's really sneaky. Maltodextrin is a starch, and that's actually has a higher glycemic index than table sugar, and that is in quite a bit of processed foods.
Yeah. A lot of people are sensitive to that one too.
Yeah, because I think because it's often derived from gluten, and that's if you have any gluten sensitivity too, then you got to be really careful with that.
Yeah. Couple questions. What is I know what it is, but our listeners might not know. What is the glycemic index?
So the glycemic index is just a measurement of how quickly a food will raise your blood sugar.
Mm-hmm.
So when it's entering the bloodstream, it will enter fast or slow depending on maybe what you eat it with. Something like a steak is going to be really low on the glycemic index. It's not going to really, every time you eat, there's insulin release, but like it's not really going to raise because there's not a lot of glucose in there. It's not really going to raise your blood sugar. Something really high, like table sugar or maltodextrin, is going to enter the bloodstream really quickly, especially in the absence of fiber, of protein and fat, and that will raise your blood sugar levels up quickly. So that glycemic index is just a measurement of that, of how quickly something will raise your blood sugar levels.
Cool. And then when we're looking at labels at the grocery store, do you have a recommendation of purchasing something that has like less than 10 grams of sugar, or like what is I know we're eating about a cup of added sugar a day. So what is safe? It's really hard to avoid sugar, especially in our American diet. So what would you recommend is, a safe amount of sugar a day?
A safe amount of sugar? Well, that's a bit of a tricky question, because
Right?
what is a safe amount? It really depends on the person. A cup a day. So I think the World Health Organization recommends like 9 grams of added sugar a day. In my opinion, I think even that's quite a bit. Like there's no need for added sugar in our diet. You can eat a whole food diet, have sugar from fruit, even limited amounts of natural sugars.
Yep.
Eaten properly is totally okay.
Yeah.
And then maybe the occasional added sugar. But how much is okay? I guess it depends on your health, on that person's health.
Right.
But the cup a day is too much and will have negative health impacts. Even 9 grams a day of added sugar, just not necessary.
Yeah.
And there's no reason to have it in our diet, but there's also no reason to remove sugars completely, or be overly strict about it either.
Right. So let's talk about some of the negative effects. So how does sugar contribute to inflammation in the body?
It does in many different ways. So sugar attaches to, it stimulates the immune system, and in stimulating the immune system, it's going to increase those inflammatory markers in your body, like increase the cytokines to help bring your body back into balance. For the inflammation, you also have to think about your gut health too. And sugar really impacts your gut health. Eating a lot of sugar, it feeds that bad gut bacteria, and that's going to increase your inflammation as well. Your immune system's going to respond. It may contribute to leaky gut or lead to leaky gut as well. The more you irritate the gut lining with these processed foods and refined sugars, feeding that bad gut bacteria, it's going to cause more inflammation in the body, and that inflammation is systemic. And so there's many different ways that it causes inflammation, but again, like the solution is a simple one, but that inflammation is going to come from a lot of different factors, I guess, from increased stress, from your gut health and things like that. It also attaches to proteins. So excess glucose in the blood attaches to proteins in the bloodstream, called advanced glycation end products. And what that does is it breaks down collagen and elastin. And so your skin's not going to be as healthy. Your joints aren't going to be as healthy, and that's going to be inflammatory as well.
Yeah, it wreaks a lot of havoc in the body. Let's talk a little bit about how it impacts our hormones, especially for women, because that's what I do a lot of. So how does the sugar relate to hormones? Well,
we know that sugar increases fat cells, of course. We know it increases fat cells, and those fat cells, they cause you to produce more estrogen. And in those fat cells producing more estrogen, you're going to end up with an imbalance. You're going to have too much estrogen, not enough progesterone. You also have to think about your liver. Like, how healthy is your liver? Is it going to be able to metabolize excess estrogen really well? Well, if you're giving it a lot of sugar, especially in the form of fructose. So you got high fructose corn syrup, you've got table sugar that has glucose, fructose. Well, your liver metabolizes fructose. Glucose can go right to the cells to be used. There is, problems with excess glucose, but fructose can't go to the cells to be used. It has to be metabolized by the liver. And that stresses out the liver over time and causes more fat around internal organs, and then, more fat on your body, producing more estrogen, but then your liver is going to be sluggish. It's not going to be able to metabolize that excess estrogen either, and you're going to get an imbalance. You're going to experience imbalance of hormones, which could lead to things like infertility or PCOS or things like that. So it definitely wreaks havoc on the body. And I'm sure that like the stress on the body as well causes issues with excess estrogen as well.
Yeah, you mentioned a little bit about glucose and how we bring that into our cells, and you talked a little bit about insulin earlier, but let's talk more about insulin resistance, what that is, and its connection between that and really sugar consumption.
Yeah, insulin resistance is really interesting. It is not a good condition, but it's also a defense mechanism for the body. It's your body saying, like, there's too much glucose coming at us. Let's create this barrier around our cells and protect us from all this glucose. And that's when you get insulin resistance. So it's really the body being like, we need to protect ourselves. There's too much. We need to form this barrier. And then it's really hard in forming that barrier. It's a lot more difficult for the insulin to effectively get that glucose into your cells. So then you end up with insulin resistance because you've got too much glucose coming into the bloodstream. And then, of course, that leads to a lot of other issues that are associated with insulin resistance, anything from, hormone imbalances to higher stress to gut issues to your brain health, your mental health being affected as well.
And more sugar cravings, right?
More sugar cravings. Yes, more sugar cravings. Definitely.
Yeah, it's like a vicious cycle.
You get this like roller coaster of, you eat sugar, raises your blood sugar level really high. If you eat something really sweet with no fiber, no fat, no protein, it raises your blood sugar levels, and your body responds by releasing a lot of insulin, bringing those blood sugar levels down. But because the amount of glucose entering the bloodstream, the amount of insulin that has been released, it brings it down far too low. And then you crave sugar again.
Yeah.
And over time, like that's that dopamine center in your brain. Your dopamine center, that pleasure center in your brain, when you're eating that sugar often, and it's like your brain starts to need that dopamine, need that sugar for that dopamine release, so it needs it to feel good. And that's why you start craving too. These constant hits of dopamine can be from anything like social media as well. You get constant hits of dopamine. Your dopamine receptors actually downregulate. And so you start to need that stimulant, and for a lot of people it is sugar, to feel good again.
Yeah. What are some strategies that we can start to break free from these sugar cravings? Give us 2 or 3 that we could do.
Yeah, so really just like you need to start eating whole foods. Just sticking to whole foods most of the time. That is just going to help you in and of itself reduce your sugar cravings, because you're starting to balance out your blood sugar levels just by eating whole foods. You won't get those cravings from that. Your gut will be healthier. You may need some extra help there, but you'll just reduce your sugar cravings because of that when you start eating whole foods and removing the ultra processed foods. They're not required in the diet. They're just not necessary. Every once in a while, sure, it's okay depending on your health, but it's, as a part of your daily diet, it's not necessary. So that's one really good step, is just to start eating whole foods. nutrient dense foods too. Think about the quality of your food. Another really important thing is just making sure you're having enough protein. So that's going to really keep you satiated, keep you full. It's going to keep your blood sugar levels stable as well. So that sense of satiety is your hormone leptin. And insulin resistance is associated with leptin resistance. And so you just might not be feeling satisfied because your leptin hormone isn't working properly. You don't really know when your body's telling you like we're full because of insulin resistance, which is also leading to leptin resistance. And a lot more people have insulin resistance than you would think. A study at Stanford University shows us that 1 in 3 people is what they came up with. 1 in 3 people have insulin resistance and they don't know it.
Yeah.
I'm in Canada, even on the Canadian Diabetes Association, they're saying 1 in 5 people have a metabolic imbalance, including insulin resistance. And many people just don't know. So making sure you're getting enough protein and you're getting these healthy fats as well so that you're able to feel satiated.
Yeah, back to the insulin resistance, and a lot of people don't know it's because they don't test it. I run insulin on everyone, but it's not, everyone looks at hemoglobin A1C, which is your, it's a good marker for, really type 2 diabetes, but insulin, plays a role in type 1 diabetes. And then just, in general health. So if you have this crazy high insulin, eventually your pancreas is going to wear out. And now you are going to be a type 1 diabetic and have to give yourself insulin. Like we can't reverse type 1 diabetes, but you can completely reverse type 2 diabetes. I mean, they kind of go hand in hand or can go. People can have both. But it's interesting when I do, when women or men, come to me with previous labs from another doctor, it's like, they didn't run your insulin. I had a really good example of this with a gentleman who was very, very sick every single morning, like nauseous. It took him hours to really feel better. And immediately I thought gut and blood sugar. So I dove into what he was eating prior to going to bed. And his body, he was just craving all of the sugar. And what was happening was he was having these, insulin and glucose spikes and crashes, likely due to, the insulin. But he was eating like, I don't even know. I think it was like one of those red Solo cups full of like Lucky Charms or like the sugariest processed sugar before bed. And so as soon as we worked on that and getting him to eat, maybe protein and fat before bed or just not eating before bed, he felt a lot better. It was really fascinating. But he had gone to doctor to doctor to doctor. I mean, he couldn't even go on vacation. It was really hard for him to even go to work because he was so sick in the morning. And that was just due to his blood sugar. And I'm grateful that he found me because, he could have been on this roller coaster for however long and then all of a sudden, become a type 1 diabetic. So back to it not being diagnosed because it's not tested. So ask for it. If this is,
And unfortunately, that is what a lot of people go through. A lot of people go through this, just like his situation, but they don't find people like you. They don't find the right people, and they just go through life not understanding why they're feeling like the way they're feeling and knowing that they're sick, but many people telling them that they're perfectly healthy and maybe they just need to take this pill or whatever for the rest of their lives and they'll be fine. Diet never being addressed properly.
Nope.
It's a very sad situation and thank goodness for people like you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we have, as a naturopathic doctor, like we have so much, countless hours of nutrition, like in education in our schooling, whereas I think medical doctors get like 5 hours. They're just not trained. They don't know. So it's not their fault. They're just not educated in it like we are, but it's huge. So tell us a little bit more about your 7-day free challenge. We'll make sure to include that link in the show notes, but sounds like a good way for people to jumpstart some sugar cravings. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it's really just like 7-day challenge, go 7 days without sugar. So no added sugar and no natural sugars, but a little bit of fruit is allowed, like low glycemic berries, maybe some kiwi. That is allowed. I don't want to make it impossible for people, but But I give tips on eating a balanced diet. So balancing out protein and healthy fats and fiber in your meals as well to help with those sugar cravings. But it's just 7 days, no sugar, but not impossible. Like eat some berries. Like it's a really good start for people if they're looking to reduce their sugar cravings and start taking charge of their own health.
I love that. Well, we could probably talk a lot more about sugar because it's just very popular and everywhere and everybody loves it. But we'll wrap it up with one final question I ask all my guests. What would be your best or favorite health tip that you could share with the audience?
Just eat real food. I know. I'm all over food, but like that is number one. You'll feel so much better if you just start eating real food.
Mm-hmm.
Get rid of the junk. Eat real food. Go to your farmer's market. Go to your, local butcher. Get real food. And
sounds simple.
Yeah, it is. It's simple.
Start with
the process, though. Like you got to start, especially if you're largely on an ultra processed food diet, just like, start making little changes, adding in whole foods where maybe before you were having like a granola bar or like a fruit stick or whatever it is, eat a whole food instead, eat a piece of fruit, just eat real food.
Yeah. Start with maybe going to the grocery store and don't going in the middle aisles. Just go to the perimeter. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Start there. Yeah. Say, all right, that's my goal today is I'm not going in the middle aisle. I'm only going to shop the perimeter and that's it. And you can start there. So great advice. Well, thank you, Melissa, for being here. We'll make sure to include all of your information, your website, which is BeFreeAndEat.com, a link to, I believe on your website, we could find the 7-day free sugar-free challenge, correct?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Can.
So yeah, we'll make sure that all that's shared in the show notes. So thank you for being here today. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. And that's a wrap, everyone. We'll see you again next week. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment below. And if you haven't done so, please be sure to give us a rating on your favorite podcast platform. Join us weekly as we inspire you to be your best version. For more, follow me on Instagram at dr.erinellis. Until next week, you got this.